We have a lot of football topics ahead for you guys. Obviously, I'm in a competitive league right now when it comes to the fantasy football. I'm in a competitive paid league, which actually I have to draft on my birthday, September 1st. I think we set it for like 7 p.m. And
Oof.
then I have the WBAL one, which we added with Tori. We added Tori in there. It's an 8-person league. So a little bit more easier to do an 8-person because it's like usually you're going to get some, like at least 5 or 6 good solid players, just depending on how the injury thing kind of goes. But for, the paid league at least, and there's 12 people in there. And so how do you draft for that? Like, how do you prepare for that? Like, I know me, I've been like, practice drafting, but there's, I know I have my tips, right? I'm sure you have your tips. I know you're in a number of leagues as well, too, right?
Yeah, I think I'm rolling in at 5 this year. My most expensive is $100.
Oh my
There are a couple of
god.
them that are free,
Yeah.
but I do mostly 10 teams. I think actually all of mine are 10 this year, because I just find that you get too stacked of teams in 8. There's not enough to choose from in 12.
Yeah.
10's kind of like your sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm in a second year of a keeper league. I've never done keepers before, so our draft for that is the 28th. So we have to set our 4 keepers by the 21st. So it'll be interesting to see how everybody fares, and you have like a week to kind of pick your draft strategy and go from there. But all the other ones are redraft, and yeah. I think technically my first draft I found out today is next Sunday, the 24th, but
Okay.
I have reunion stuff for high school
Oh
going
my
on that
god.
weekend, so
Jeez.
we might just see how auto goes for the first time ever in my life. That kills me to say, but then I have drafts 28, 29, 3, and I think we still have to schedule one more, so.
No, that's really 5 leagues. Are you gonna like you're gonna have like a planner of like all the day? Like you're just gonna,
No, usually when I like go to set one team or
yeah.
make waiver requests, I just do it all together.
That's
Um,
smart. That's smart.
yeah, because I'm like, oh, well, if I'm checking this, then I should just take the time to do all of it, or I am gonna forget. So
No, that's
there
really
is
smart.
there is a
Yeah.
couple like outliers though, like the league that's $100. In order to add or drop a player, you have to post on the message board, and so that like you could be in the second half of a Sunday game and know you want to drop your kicker to pick up a different kicker or something. And as long as they're not a waiver, the only players that are waivers in that league are who's dropped the week before. So as long as they're not a waiver, it could be 5 p.m. on a Sunday, and you say you want somebody, that's your guy, and the moves process on Thursdays. So that's the only one where it's like, okay, I got to be actually really paying attention
Paying
all the
attention to
time,
this,
and
yeah.
yeah. But no,
Well,
that one's fun. I wish there were more leagues that like adopted something similar, but it is a
yeah.
lot of work for commissioners, so.
And God bless those commissioners, right? Because they set the rules of it, and most of the time they're criminals because they're corrupt and they're horrible people. But you know what? Nonetheless, that solid leagues. So I'm doing this 12. I do not get the sweet spot, which means I have to be very, very cerebral in my picks, right? I've heard from a lot of people. I've actually been on Twitter this past week, and I've seen a lot of people post like advice, right? I've been doing mock drafts in a 12-person league, so depending on, because I don't know when I'm going to draft. I could draft early. I could draft in the back half, right? I always can kind of consider all scenarios. Like if you get if you draft earlier in the draft, that's great. That means you're going to probably get a quality player. You're going to probably get a suggested quality player, but it's also for me, like when I think about the, how I'm drafting fantasy, obviously, guys, you want to go ahead and get that running back out the way. Just get it out the way early. So I know everybody wants to go. I mean, this is I'm just prefacing how my strategy is. I always go for running backs early because they get injured the most.
Miles cuts to his right. Bailey takes him down.
I mean, if you don't have a good offensive line or if they're just injury riddled, those guys are just hard to come by, and you're just always one injury away from your team being jacked up if you don't have a quality back. I'm gonna be honest. Like if you're in the later rounds this year, I think a couple guys I'm keeping my eye on is Omar Hampton. I think he's going to be a workhorse for the Chargers. I think he'll be a really good pickup that a lot of people won't think about at first. or at least if you haven't been paying attention to the preseason, you probably be like, oh, he's a rookie. I think he's going to have a big role very early because Najee's kind of in the air with the whole fireworks situation. We talked about that in the past. Guy, I mean, rumor has he's wearing an eye patch in camp. Like he hasn't really taken any serious. Like, just a lot going on with Najee right now. So I say get your running backs out within the first 3 rounds. Try to pick your running back. If typically, I mean, we know that you got the obvious running backs out there. We know you got, Derrick Henry. We know you have, Barkley from Philadelphia. But those guys are obvious. They're going to go quickly. I don't know how you feel about this, Kayla. I'm not really in love yet with the kid from Las Vegas. I saw him play yesterday. And I know everybody's like Ashton Genty. I'm not in love quite yet. I don't know because I don't know how this. I know that Pete Carroll, he's kind of like that old school run the ball, play action type of coach. You look at how he built Seattle. He kind of was like, he had dominant run games, which I expect he'll eventually put his stamp on later in the season. But it just takes time. As the season goes. And I think for Ashton Genty, I think he's more of a flex guy, if I was giving advice to you, because I think he's going to take a long time to develop. And I wouldn't get him within the first 3 rounds. Like if that was your pick, I mean, I see all the hype behind people like, oh, pick this guy. But I'm like, you got to prove it to me. I know what he did in college, but it was in a lesser conference technically. I know he showed up and did some big things against Penn State. But I just got to see a bigger sample size from him. I know he got stuffed one run, and then he came back and stiff armed a couple guys, a couple plays later, but it was against the second team. So I don't know quite yet what I'm getting from Ashton Genty. I know that's a name that's been kind of thrown out there. I do like Irving from Tampa Bay because he's a do-it-all back. He can catch out of the backfield for you. He can run the rock. And I say if you're picking later, those are the guys I like to put a little bit more stock into as your RB2s or your RB1s because I just feel like, they rack up more points, especially when they can catch out of the backfield. They can do a lot of things for you. And I would say keep an eye on Nick Chubb because I think, Nick Chubb as well is set up to have a comeback year. I mean, every time he's gotten injured, he comes back and he still shows the league he can run for 900, 1,000 yards. So I think he's another guy that could be a flex option. But typically, I like to get that running back and to at least your first 2 running backs, the first and third round, and your top wide receiver out within round 2. And there are a plethora of wide receivers this year. I think that can make a difference. And one more name I'm going to toss up before I toss this over to you, Kayla. I think people should really be high on what CMC could do for San Francisco.
That's how a white man runs a football.
I know he was injured last year, Kayla. I know it's not a guarantee, but I think given how that offense looks and what they're going to be, he's going to get a lot of touches. I think he can spark that offense again. I think Brock Purdy somewhat production goes up because it's less pressure on him to kind of be the guy. So I would take a waiver on him to see if that's your RB2 if you're later in the drafts. And I don't think a lot of people are going to go for him because of the injury he had last year. But I do think he's due for a big comeback type of year. And I think that he will show the league that he's at least still a top 5 running back. I'm not going to say he's the running back, but I think he's still going to be in the top 5 before the season's out. So that's my advice. That's kind of what I've done. That's kind of my draft strategy. What do you think? Like, what would you go with, Kayla? What is your process when you pick?
Yeah, so I want to address the 3 that you talked about also, but I think if you are drafting, I'm going to throw 8 out because I feel like most people don't do 8-team leagues, but for 10 and 12, I think it really is dependent on your draft settings. Are you points per reception or are you standard? I think that has a lot to do with it. I believe there's less than 10 teams in the NFL right now who have a clear number 1 running back. So my advice is to narrow in on who those people are and make sure you get one of them on your team. If you can get 2, even better. But they are spaced out a little bit. Like, you're obviously not going to take James Conner in the first, second, maybe even third rounds, but he's a solo back in Arizona. So, he's somebody that you should monitor because at the end of the day, you don't want to timeshare in a league where you have to fill at least 2 running back slots. So, getting a standalone guy is the best advice that I can give when it goes running back situations. But I think I'm going to be trying a new strategy this year, and to not be so focused on needing to have depth that I glance over players that I might have an abundance of positions at. I'd be like, oh, I have to draft 5 running backs. I have to draft 5 wide receivers. Like, I have to have that specific number. But, you'll get to a point where, like, best available is best available. And I think we're going to see a lot of leagues this year in the first round, people taking Jamar Chase first overall, or you're taking Justin Jefferson in the first round, receivers like that. And I
Very
wouldn't
safe picks.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be, and hey, that's something that I'm considering. I have the number 2 pick in my $100 league, and if the number 1 guy overall doesn't take Jamar Chase, I'm going to draft him second. I've already decided that I don't need to do any more work on it. And it's even a standard league, but I just think the point separation by what I can get it to and how it sets me apart from my competitors is it's just too much to pass over. So I would say look at your team need. Don't be afraid to go depth. You obviously want depth, especially at running back, but drafting a backup running back before you draft, your third wide receiver if you start 3 or something is not, I don't think is the safest. Why are you going to build up your bench points in order to just lack starting points? So that's something that I have to convince myself of. So you started, who was the first guy you started with? Amarian Hampton? Right?
I think, and I'm just focusing on if you do not have a top 5 pick, these are guys I think that can contribute for you right away because they're going to be thrown into starting roles. I actually like Los Angeles offensive line. I do like that.
Yeah, I mean, they took a hit with Rashawn Slater, so that makes me a little bit more nervous. I think, all the rookies that you mentioned are going to have growing pains, but I do like Marion Hampton because Jim Harbaugh and, oh my God, the guy, offensive coordinator's name is escaping me, Greg Roman.
They had to run the ball.
Notoriously run the ball. We saw it in Baltimore, and that's arguably why, Roman was ran out of Baltimore. That was not, no pun intended. But, you don't need to look at Hampton until at least round 5. So he's going to be there. For Ashton Genty, good luck waiting on him because ADP right now has him at 10. Whether that's too high or not, you're going to have to make the split decision that if he comes back on the snake and, you picked 8th overall, that might be somebody you go for if you drafted a receiver. I think there's not a competition battle there, even though Raheem Mostert is now in Vegas. I believe that the Raiders signed him in the offseason because they weren't sure how they were going to go in the draft and if Genty would fall to them or Travis Hunter, whoever that was going to be. Raheem Mostert had 1 solid season. I mean, he's bounced around to God, I can't even remember how many teams.
He's been a journey, man.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
I can't remember. It's been so many. It's definitely double digits. But I don't want to get it wrong. And you think of Pete Carroll, you probably think of Marshawn Lynch, but Pete Carroll's back with Geno Smith again. Geno Smith usually favors his running backs on teams. I mean, Kenneth Walker had a lot of success in Seattle when he was there. So I think there's some stuff brewing for Genty. Is he worth the round 10 price tag? I don't know. I haven't heard the same hype about him as I did Jahmyr Gibbs, for example. But I wouldn't be surprised if he put up good numbers. It might just have a little bit of a learning curve to get there. And then Christian McCaffrey, I'm not drafting him. I've gotten burned by him so many times. You could be right, but the key is that he has to be healthy. It'd be different if he blew his Achilles, one of them, and we see how he bounces back. But to have knee problems and ankle problems, feet problems, calf, whatever, name a body part in the lower body, and he probably
had it. No, that's valid. Yeah.
So my strategy this year is going to be not necessarily draft for depth, but draft for best overall, but also draft people who are going to be on the field.
Yeah, no, that's valid, and that's why, like I said earlier, I think I like Irving and the other guys. I mean, I would say your RB2 should be able to catch and run the ball. I mean, that's how you. If you can't get a big name, I think Irving's one of them. I like. I'm blanking on names too. I like the kid from the Giants, Travis. I believe. I think he had an 800-yard rushing junior or something.
Oh, Tyrone Tracy.
Tyrone Tracy, there you go. He had a good productive year. I think he's due to kind of get more work this year, especially with what I know Russell Wilson is. He's predicated off the play action. That's where his bread and butter are. So when he has a good running game, that kind of helps Russell Wilson in terms of his ability to kind of unlock his game a little bit. And I think, Tyron Tracy is due to jump to that 1,000-yard mark. I mean, he had 832 yards last year in the offensive line, but he wasn't the best. So we'll see. I think another sleeper, if you're looking for a wide receiver, I'm just talking about if you're picking 7th to 12th in the draft, I would say take a flyer on the McMillan kid from Carolina, the Carolina Panthers. I mean, think about it. He's going to be their definitive number one. Bryce is looking to have a big year. He's a tall target. He's already kind of lived up to some of the hype early in the preseason. He's already showed the ability to get separation. So I think I'm not saying he's wide receiver one, but if you're just at a place where you need another guy, a surefire guy that you don't mind, waiting, he could be a flex kind of mid wide receiver 2 guy. Once you got the guy as your wide receiver 1, I would say take a flyer on him. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know yet how the kid from Arizona is gonna pan out yet. The kid from Ohio State, I'm blanking on his name too.
And his name is Maserati Mar. Touchdown, Buckeye.
Maserati, that was his nickname, right? I don't know yet because I don't know what the quarterback situation looks like. So there are a lot of guys. My thinking process always with that is like take guys, and obviously George Pickens is going to be very high. So if you don't have round one, either pick 1 through 5 or 6, that's going to be the other guy that I think is going to outside of CD. That's going to go right off the board very quickly because George Pickens is in a prove it year. He's in a situation where he has to show that he's number one guy that can be trusted. So I think he's going to get some work this year, probably have his better year yet as a pro wide receiver. So we'll see. That's just my advice. I mean, look, go after the best available, but then also go after a versatile support guy as your RB2 or your wide receiver that's going to help you. Whether that's special teams, whatever. But I like to go on the younger side because it seems these old heads, man, they get hurt. I think another guy too, Malik Neighbors, is going to have a good year too. I think he's due for a jump in his production now that he has a quarterback that will actually throw to him. Because I had Malik Neighbors last year, and Daniel Jones would not look at this man till the second half. I'm like, Daniel Jones, you have arguably a very talented wide receiver. He's young, but you can tell he just has it. Get him the ball. And it's just like, I can see the frustration. But I think if we know Russell Wilson, if we know any of those quarterbacks in the Giants, depth chart, they're going to throw deep. They're going to take gambles. So I think Malik Neighbors can get himself up to 1,000 yards, maybe even over 1,000 yards for the Giants this year. We'll see. But yeah, anything you want to add in terms of the draft? That's just my thought process with that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like I could go forever on talking about players in fantasy and draft, but
I'm telling you,
more topics to do. We don't want to bore our co-host over here who's trying to go to sleep. So.
Yeah, look, he's going to sleep. Hey, look, again, this is just our experiences, right? We played in multiple leagues. I won one of my leagues last year, with that strategy, and obviously, Kayla's going to try, multiple strategies, I'm sure, across all 5 of those. So again, just keep an eye on Twitter, keep an eye on NFL on the NFL app to kind of see who's healthy, what's going on, and just that'll help you out as well if you're a beginner or if you're just kind of looking for advice to kind of go from there.